And welcome back. In this tutorial, I'm going to briefly cover how Witty uses static and relative positioning, and I'm going to do a second tutorial to kind of finish it up, and how you can use the z-index and how relative positioning has or can have its own child widgets, and how that relates to absolute positioning. So as you can see, we have a new project called Positioning 2. You can call it whatever you want to call it. And what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the label. We're going to use Witty text like we always do. Going to get rid of this. And I need to add 2 more headers. Going to add in our Witty border. And I'm going to add our Witty CSS decoration style, or CSS, yeah, the Witty CSS decoration style. Okay, and we're going to use that just so we can add a border around our widgets. So I'm going to create 2 widgets. Box 1. Going to add it to our application root. Going to create another box. Okay, now we have our 2 widgets, and we're going to set the border for each one of our widgets. We access the decoration style object, and we call set border, and we call the set border class directly. It is a value class, so you don't need to create it dynamically as a pointer. Pass in that it's going to be solid. Going to pass in that it's going to be thick, and these are enumerations. And we're going to set the color for the first one to black, like we did the first one. Box 2, decoration style, set border, this one's also going to have it's going to be solid, it's going to be thick, and we're going to set the color to red. Alright, now that we have done that, if I save this and I compile it, let's just see what it looks like so far. And excuse the long call, it's taking a while to compile. Okay, that has compiled. The server is now running. And let's see here. Okay, that's actually the finished product. As you can see, we have two boxes or 2 widgets, one with a black border, one with a red border. We saw this in our previous tutorial. I actually should put some text in there, but you get the gist of it. So no positioning has been set, though in CSS the default positioning for all divs, which is what a Witty text widget is static to begin with. So it just flows from one widget on top of the other widget, or one div on top of another div. So if I go ahead and just put in box 1, box 2, and what we want to do is go ahead and set our position scheme. So if we do box 1, set position scheme, we're just going to set it static, and this is the default for all divs in CSS to begin with, and there's also the default scheme in the Witty library. So in actuality, we really don't even need to even set this because that is the default. But just to show you that it can be set, I went ahead and showed it and set the position scheme to static. As you can see, we're compiling. You should see no change. We do a refresh. See, we just add some text, made it a little bit bigger. But here's your two widgets. Nothing new there. Now what we're going to do now is let's go ahead and set the margin so we can move box 2 to a new position. And I apologize, I did a box 1 for that, but if we go ahead and compile it again, getting fat figure today. See what happens. Let's go ahead and run it just to say that it works. Okay, there you go. All right, now let's go ahead and set the margin. So box 2 is the one we want to deal with. Set margin, and we're going to get the length, which is going to be 150 pixels. So we pass in that enumerator, and it's going to be 150 pixels to the left. Set the margin for the top. 100 pixels. And from the top. So if we go ahead and compile this, I want to shut the server down while that's compiling. And again, remember, this is just using static. And if we run it again, excuse me, we refresh, just moves it down 150 pixels to the left or from the top, and 100 pixels from the left. Now watch this. We do relative. Relative is really no different from static unless you start setting properties. And as you can see, we started to set properties. I truly believe from looking at this that it looks like the way Witty has implemented this, that relative and static really have no difference in the way it's been implemented in the library. If we run this, do a refresh, no difference. Now let's try something. Let's try this. If we change the top property to a -20, compile, well, not compile, not yet. Let's close this. I stop the server, compile it again. And if you know anything about relative positioning means that when you position your elements or your divs on the page, that particular widget or div, in our case, is going to be positioned on top of the previous div or widget. So if we run this, we do a refresh, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Look how box 2 is actually overlapping box 1. 100 pixels over and -20 from the top relative to where it started from, relative to its position. So 0, 0 would be right here. And then notice how it moves the box up. If you looked at my illustrations, notice how this widget is actually 20 pixels above from where it started from. And notice, if you know anything about the z-index, this one has a higher z-index from this one because this is static. So even if we set the z-index on here, manually, which we'll show you how to do that with relative positioned elements, this would still be on top. So just remember that when you use relative positioning overrides any static elements, even if you try to change the z-index to a higher index from this one. So that's just a quick tutorial. Again, this is not to say that this is how you should lay your website out or anything like that. It's just to show you this is how Witty implements relative positioning, static positioning, and how it relates to C++. You know, all you have to do is get access to the decoration style. If you want to set a border, you set the position scheme. In our case, box 1 was set to static using the enumerator static, and we set the border for this one, set the position scheme to relative, and then you just use set margin to position it anywhere you want it to be positioned. So in our case, just as in the previous tutorial, we positioned it 150 pixels to the left and minus 20 pixels from the top. As you can see, it starts from 0, and then minus 20 is 20 pixels upwards from where it starts from, in the case of box 2. So I'll continue this in the second tutorial, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.